video, we see about ptosis, third nerve palsy and proptosis. Suppose we got a patient with ptosis, drooping of upper eyelid. We have to look at the age of the patient. So depending on the age, we have to conclude as congenital or acquired. So in case of acquired ptosis, if the patient is old age, we have to suspect aponeurotic ptosis, and we have to inquire whether ptosis is sudden or gradual. So sudden history of ptosis, we have to suspect any neurological lesion, if, and we have to inquire about unilateral or bilateral. So bilateral, we have to suspect myasthenia, and we have to inquire about associated vision loss. If the upper eyelid covering the pupil, it will cause vision loss. And we have to inquire about any history of headache, double vision or fever. If the ptosis worsens as the day progresses, we have to suspect myasthenia. We have to do the eye spec test. And we have to look whether any squint or extraocular movement limitation is there. So Turner palsy resulting in ptosis will cause outward and downward eye, and extraocular muscles. If the other extraocular muscles also involved, their muscle limitation will occur. And we have to look at the pupil status. So dilated pupil with RAPD, we have to suspect Turner palsy, and myotic pupil, we have to suspect Horner syndrome. And we have to inquire about any history of trauma. Traumatic damage to the levator aponeurosis will result in ptosis. And we have to inquire about whether ptosis worsen with jaw movement in case of Marcus-Gunn phenomena, and we have to inquire about history of diabetes. Next we come to ptosis evaluation. We have to look at the head posture, and then we have to look at the palpebral fissure height. Suppose in this patient we have got right eye ptosis. Right eye there is 6 mm palpebral fissure height. In the left eye it is 11 mm. And MRD, marginal reflex distance, in the right eye it is 0, in the left eye it is 4 mm. What is MRD? After shining the torchlight into the patient eye, distance between corneal light reflex to the center of the upper eyelid is measured. It is MRD. So normal value is 4 to 4.5 mm. MRD2 is the distance of corneal light reflex to the center of lower eyelid margin in the primary gaze. It is 5 to 5.5 mm. So center of the pupil to the center of the upper eyelid margin. So 2 mm of drooping is there, it is mild ptosis. If 3 mm of drooping is there, it is moderate ptosis. 4 mm or more drooping is there, it is severe ptosis. Next we come to margin crease distance. It is an important anatomical landmark which give clue to the levator action. It is measured with patient looking down and distance from central eyelid margin to the most prominent lid crease. So on looking down, distance from central eyelid margin to the most prominent lid crease. Normal value is 5 to 7 mm. In case of women it is 8 to 10 mm. This crease is absent in congenital ptosis and it is higher in aponeurotic ptosis. So for our patient, MRD2 is almost same between right and left eye. Then we have to look at the Bell's phenomena. So Bell's phenomena, in both eye it is present. So on closure, eyeball will move towards upwards. So that is Bell's phenomena. And corneal sensitivity present. We have to test with cotton wisp. And we have to look at Marcus-Gunn jaw winking phenomena. In our patient it is absent. So usually what happens with the jaw movement or jaw opening, ptosis will improve is Marcus-Gunn jaw winking phenomena. Next is assessment of levator function test. Excursion of upper eyelid from extreme down gaze to the extreme up gaze is a measure of LPS function, negating the action of frontalis muscle. So we have to negate the action of frontalis muscle, then we have to measure from the extreme down gaze to the extreme up gaze, how much is elevation occurring? More than 15 mm is normal, more than 8 mm is good, and 5 to 7 mm is fair, and less than 4 mm is poor. So in this test, ice pack test is performed where we are getting in this patient both itosis. On application of ice pack, there is improvement. So when come to DD of the ptosis, we have to look at pseudotosis. Lack of lid support in case of old age and contralateral lid retraction. So contralateral lid retraction will appear as ipsilateral ptosis and ipsilateral hypotropia and brotosis, excessive bro skin, and dermatochalasis is excessive eyelid skin. Ptosis is abnormal drooping of upper eyelid. Classification congenital or acquired. In case of acquired, we have myogenic, neurogenic, aponeurotic, and mechanical. Myogenic caused by myopathy of levator function or impaired transmission of impulses at the neuromuscular junction. Neurogenic caused by innervational defects such as third nerve or Horner's, and aponeurotic caused by defective levator aponeurosis such as senile or post-operative cases, and mechanical caused due to excessive weight such as tumors, scars, and chalasia. So, neurogenic causes are Horner syndrome, oculosympathetic palsy. So, Horner syndrome usually unilateral, mild ptosis and meiosis will be there. Normal pupillary reactions. Ptosis is due to paralysis of Muller's muscle. So, miotic pupil and ptosis. Next is third nerve palsy is neurogenic cause. Severe unilateral ptosis and defective abduction. Defective adduction. Whereas abduction is normal and here defective elevation. So other eye is elevating normally, here ptotic eye is not elevating and defective depression. So normal abduction is due to lateral rectus is supplied by 6th nerve. Next is myogenic ptosis, ocular myasthenia. So it is bilateral but asymmetrical, worse with fatigue and in up gaze. Diplopia is intermittent and usually vertical. Next is aponeurotic ptosis, weakness of levator aponeurosis. Causes are involutional, postoperative, or blepharochalasis. Mild high upper lid crease. So high upper lid crease in case of mild ptosis. Mechanical due to dermatochalasis and large tumors and orbital lesions. Next is simple congenital ptosis. There is developmental dystrophy of levator muscle, occasionally associated with weakness of superior rectus also. Frequent absence of upper eyelid crease. So upper eyelid crease is absent here. Blepharophimosis syndrome is rare congenital disorder and autosomal dominant in inheritance, moderate to severe symmetrical ptosis, short horizontal palpebral fissure, telecanthus and epicanthus inversus. Telecanthus is lateral displacement of medial canthus. Epicanthus inversus is lower lid fold is larger than the upper lid fold. And poorly developed nasal bridge and hypoplasia of superior orbital margins. Marcus-Gunn-Jamming syndrome accounts for about 5% of all cases of congenital ptosis. Retraction or wink of ptotic eyelid in conjunction with stimulation of ipsilateral pterygoid muscles. So on opening of the mouth, ptosis is improving. And contralateral jaw movement will cause ptosis improvement. So treatment for congenital ptosis almost always surgical treatment. Acquired ptosis, treat underlying cause, followed by surgery. What are three surgeries? Fascinella, servate, levator resection, and frontal sling. Fascinella servate indicated for mild ptosis, 1.5 to 2 mm ptosis with good levator function. Excision of upper border of tarsus and lower border of Muller's muscle and overlying conjunctiva is done in Fasinella servate. Next is levator resection, indicated for any ptosis provided levator function is at least 5 mm. Contraindicated in patients with having severe ptosis with poor levator function. Shortening of levator complex amount determined by levator function and severity of ptosis. Next is frontalis bro suspension. Indications are severe ptosis with poor levator function. So 4 mm or less levator function, we have to do the frontalis bro suspension. And another indication is Markers gun winking syndrome, attachment of tarsus to the frontalis muscle with the sling. Next we come to another cause of ptosis, third nerve palsy. So vasa vasorum supply part of the nerve but not pupillary fibers. So if the vasa vasorum involved in the medical condition, pupil will not be affected. Like diabetes, we don't get the pupil affection. Whereas pupillary fibers lie in the peripheral region in the optic nerve. So if there is a compressive lesion from outside, they will involve the pupil and we get the RAPD in the patient. So symptoms are drooping along with binocular double vision and pain may be present. Signs: ptosis along with abduction of globe, so downward and outward, and intorsion of globe which increases on attempted down gaze, and limited adduction, limited elevation, limited depression, dilated pupil with defective accommodation. Limited adduction and elevation and depression due to other extraocular muscle involvement. Here we are seeing third nerve palsy. A write a total ptosis. B, write a exotrophia in the primary position. C is normal abduction, abduction lateral rectus, and D is limitation of adduction. E is limitation of elevation. F, limitation of depression. So investigation, if the age of the patient is less than 50 years, we have to do CT or MRI or cerebral angiography. If the age of the patient is more than 50 years, if it involves the pupil, we have to check the sugar profile and lipid profile and BP, CBC, ESR, CRP, CT and MRI and cerebral angiography. So cerebral angiography, MRI, we are suspecting any compressive lesion. If the pupil is not involved, sugar profile and lipid profile, BP, CBC, ESR and CRP. Treatment for non-surgical cases, treatment of underlying cause. So for diplopia, occlusion patch or prism in the involved eye, monitor children for development of amblyopia. Surgical causes are neurosurgery if there is aneurysm or hematoma or tumor, strabismus or ptosis surgery not earlier than the 6 months from the time of onset. Follow-up, pupil sparing cases, observe daily for 5 days for pupil involvement. Recheck every 4 to 6 weeks, and if secondary to ischemia function usually returns within 3 months. DD is myasthenia gravis, thyroid associated orbitopathy, chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia and idiopathic orbital inflammatory disease. Next we come to the case of proptosis. Suppose when we get a patient of proptosis in our OPD, we have to rule out pseudoproptosis. Like high myopia will resemble the proptosis, and if there is lid retraction, it will also resemble as proptosis. If the case is acute and it is unilateral, we have to suspect orbital cellulitis and traumatic hematoma, and we have to look for nasal sinus pathology and thyroid or orbital inflammatory disease. Thyroid orbital inflammatory disease will have subacute course, whereas if the patient is giving our history as chronic history, we have to suspect neoplasms, and we have to examine the conjunctiva for congestion and corneal epithelium for staining, because due to proptosis corneal surface is exposed more to external environment. And we have to look at extraocular muscle movement, whether there is any limitation of the movement, or if there is pulsatile proptosis, we have to inquire history of hypertension. It may suggest the keratoconus fistula. If there is intermittent proptosis, we have to suspect orbital varix. We have to do diplopia charting. We have to look at the fundus, and we have to check the pupillary response in case of proptosis cases. So, in the OPD, on looking at the head end from above the patient, we can easily make out proptosis. So we have to look at eyelid for any lid retraction or lid lag in case of thyroid orbitopathy or S-shaped lid thickening suggesting neurofibroma and any lag of thalamus. We have to look at the cornea for exposure keratopathy. We have to look at the iris for lesion nodules and neurofibromatosis. So here we are having young child with Ewing sarcoma and proptosis. We have to look at pupil for RAPD and ocular motility limitation. So direct muscle involvement by the disease or mechanical limitation or compression of nerves and cavernous sinus thrombosis are the cause of ocular motility limitation. And we have to look at the fundus for any uh, disc edema or folds of the choroid, any failure of the disc. We have to look. Next is ocular examination. Include visual acuity, diminution of vision due to optic nerve compression and corneal exposure. Diffraction we have to do acquired hyperopia due to mass indenting the posterior pole of the globe and high myopia causing pseudoproptosis. IOP we have to measure thyroid orbitopathy due to restriction of movement and arteriovenous fistula due to elevated venous pressure. And conjunctiva we have to look at chemosis in severe inflammation, salmon color patch in lymphoma. So if the proptosis is axial, lesions of intracorneal space arising from optic nerve or central space. Example are optic nerve glioma, optic nerve sheath meningioma, cavernous hemangioma, schwannoma, neurofibroma, and orbital varix. If the globe is displaced downwards, causes fibrous dysplasia, frontal mucocele, and subperiosteal hematoma, lymphoma, neuroblastoma, neurofibroma, schwannoma, and thyroid orbitopathy. If the displacement of globe is upward, lacrimal sac tumor, lymphoma, maxillary sinus, and metastatic tumor. And lateral displacement of the globe, lacrimal sac tumor, ethmoid mucocele, and metastatic tumor, and lethal midline granuloma, nasopharyngeal tumor, and rhabdomyosarcoma. So, what are the investigations we order in case of proptosis? So, first thing we have to order thyroid function test, followed by complete blood picture and imaging studies. Imaging studies, CT scan, axial, coronal, or sagittal is most helpful. CT scan is most helpful, and MRI. If we are suspecting any infectious etiology, we have to do culture. And ocular ultrasound and X-ray and other ANCA, AS, ANA level and carotid angiography. In case of CCF or any vascular pathology. So here there is extraocular muscles are thickened in case of Graves ophthalmopathy. And in this patient we are seeing left preseptal cellulitis. There is soft tissue thickening in the preseptal region, whereas in the orbital cellulitis with ophthalmoplegia, axial CT shows the preseptal and orbital opacification. So in this patient we are having lymphangioma. So this is site of lymphangioma. Next, this is a case of rhabdomyosarcoma. Optic nerve sheath meningioma causing